Continuing with the presentation, we're going to talk about the random forest model, and which is very popular in data science because it's got some characteristics that make it special and competitive compared to other science, data science models. This is a model that has less to do with overfitting, like we saw in the last presentation, and this is because it uses the construction of several classification trees and regressions to integrate them in one model. So this allows random forests to be more robust. It also has a record training time because that tree construction is independent. So resources from programming can be used in parallel in order to obtain faster results. Apart from this, it's also known for its high performance, not only in terms of accuracy, but also the R square and RSME in the regression models. And it's demonstrated to have a good performance, even for databases that are very large and very effective also to do predictions. It also inherits the characteristics of the cards to work with missing data. It, it can work with that missing information. And it's also shown that it keeps the performance despite the fact that there's missing information. Some characteristics of random forest is that, as I said before, it integrates several trees built by resampled data sets and randomly selected variables. It also inherits the flexibility of cards in handling missing data. This means that based on the initial missing data, several data sets are made by using resampling techniques. This means that an observation that's within a data set, the initial data set, can be repeated in the sample that we are generating. So several samples are created who are independent and that are controlled with a parameter that we're going to see afterwards. And from those subsets that are created by that resampling process, uh, random variables are selected, meaning that the construction of the tree or every construction of a tree not necessarily use the same variables that are so a subset of those variables is used randomly. So we can observe that random component that this model has. As we saw also before, it has this flexibility of managing missing data like cards, and it has some disadvantages also compared to the cards. And one of them is that it loses flexibility in interpretation of the model, since it cannot be reproduced in the trees as we saw before. This is the construction of a random forest where we involve the construction of several decision trees. Every decision tree works like an expert giving an opinion on a specific topic. In this case, we are going to continue with our classification of fruits. So we would train our tree independently with the method that I mentioned before. And every expert is going to predict if a new fruit arrives where it should be classified. So random forest, what it's going to do is to take the votes of each one of the experts so that in the end it's going to keep the best result. In this case, the first tree can suggest that the fruit is an apple, the second one could suggest that it's a lemon, and the third an apple. So the function of random forest is to use that information to try and identify what is the opinion of the majority. So based on that, if the majority suggested that it was an apple, then this is going to be the final decision. So this is the meaning of forest, which means that instead of one sole tree, like in cards, we would have a whole forest. In this slide, we can see an example, a formal example, showing how random forest works. So in this case, that fruit has several variables that we've registered in a training database, where we ask about the diameter, the color, if it grows in summer, and the shape of the fruit. So if we can see each one of these trees, several variables participated, and variables are chosen randomly. And these are used for reconstructing the tree. So in this case, we would have diameter, the color, and here the color and the shape, and this one the diameter, and if it grows in summer. So the idea of random forest is to do it with many more trees. It's not only for illustrating. This is just for illustrating, I'm sorry. And remember that the construction of each one of the trees is done based on observations that are made randomly, chosen with resampling. So, so this can be done several times in this subset. The information that we have from the new observation is going to be reviewed by each one of the trees, and the idea is to see what's the classification that each one through. So if we can see that what was defined by the experts in each one, for example, here it suggested that it was an orange, here that it was a cherry, and here that it was an orange. So in the end, due to the majority, what this model is going to do is classify this fruit as an orange. Something else that I mentioned is that the advantage of these trees is that we could build them independently until this point, until the information of the votes is consolidated. And this is an advantage for computational purposes because we can program it in parallel. So this would throw results that are a lot faster. Regarding the parameters that we've got to consider in random forest, the most famous ones are the ones from our random forest package in R. We have this mtry, which is the number of predictors considered in each partition. So within the construction of each one of the trees, we can vary the amount of predictors that we choose randomly, either 2, 3, or 4, depending on the variables that we have taken into consideration. We will have to adjust this parameter. Generally, for R, it is the amount of variables with the initial data set divided by 3. That's one of the criteria that's used by default. And the number of trees also that we can build is another parameter that we can identify. So R uses by default 100 trees. Having said this, we finished this presentation for random forest and card. I hope that you are able to take advantage of all this information after this video. We are going to leave the scripts as an example so that you can execute them. And if you have questions, you can ask them in the forum.